Boys and girls, how lucky are we today on Tough Cookies to be joined by a rock and roll legend, one of my heroes, joining us all the way from Arizona. Am I correct, Nils?
Yeah, out in Scottsdale, Old Town.
And what's the weather like there today?
Just a balmy 114. Like little, you're walking across the yard. It's good that it's across the yard and not down the road because we're having our heat spell. It's normal for August, but it's pretty bad heat.
Well, boys and girls, we have a lot of Nils Lofgren fans on the show today, Nils, by the way. People very excited to be talking to you today. We got Nils Lofgren, who the man needs no introduction, but let me do it. This guy was in one of my favorite bands in the 1970s called Grin. Member of the E Street Band, member of Crazy Horse, Rock and Roll Hall of Famer, rock and roll lifer, Nils Lofgren. Thank you so much for joining us today on Tough Cookies. Nils, I love this new record that's coming out called Weathered. Tell me about how this came about.
Well, Adam, I've been touring pretty regularly outside of the E Street Band, and last couple of years I've been back in the fold with Neil Young and Crazy Horse, which has been beautiful. Of course, I'm an alumni of the first two Ringo Starr All-Star bands.
Yep.
He just had 30th anniversary.
Wow.
Got to go out and sing a little help for my friends in L.A. 30 years to the night, Dark Street Theater back in '89. But I made this album, I think it was the year before last, called my last studio album, Blue with Lou, featuring 6 songs covered with Lou Reed. The great Lou Reed, of course. Sad that we lost Lou. Wanted to share the songs we'd written that no one had heard. And although I've been touring acoustically regularly, I hadn't played with my own electric band over 15 years. And another plus, the friends that made the actual album, Andy Newmark on drums, got my Andy Newmark pin, Kevin McCormick on bass, Cindy Mizell, great singer, worked with a lot with E Street, and brother Tommy, who's been with me all the way back to the Grin days. They were all available. We went town to town on the bus, kept it really loose and energetic, a lot of improv, surprising each other every night, and really had a ball. And early on, before we left, we were rehearsing here in our home. Amy moved us all in, my wife. We had a great, hellacious week of, round-the-clock rehearsals. And I wasn't going to record the tour. I just wanted to play. Sometimes when you're recording a live record, and I made a few, you do a bit of work to get that idea out of your head, because you just want to go out and take the energy of the crowd and go. So I said, let's not do that. But just before we left, Amy said, look, I know you don't want to make a live record. Please just record the show.
Yeah. Smart woman.
But I wasn't thinking about it because I had no intention of it.
Yeah.
Fast forward, it's over. I said, I don't feel like it. But, it was a really great vibe all over the country. Why don't you send me some rough mixes? And when I started listening, I realized there was something special going on with this cast of characters and dear friends and the music. So long story short, we decided to share it, and we finally got it ready. It's coming out soon, and really feel great about it.
I think it's fantastic, and I'm glad because I love the Blues for Lou album, and I feel like this is obviously like a companion piece to it.
Right.
For some of the Tough Cookies, can you tell us how did these co-writes with Lou come about? When did you write those songs with Lou Reed?
Way back it was about '79, I was making an album called Nils with the great Bob Ezrin, one of the all-time great producers. A&M Records hooked us up. And suburbs, we had a rental house up to New York, working with Bob 2-3 days a week on pre-production. And one day Bob said, "Nils, we got songs we really like No Mercy, some of my better songs, but you got a lot of good music where the lyrics are kind of subpar."
Oh.
And rather than, he's a producer, that's his job. And I don't take it personally, man. Look, I got to grow up with, like we all did, Bob Dylan, the Beatles, the Stones, writers like Peter Gabriel, Sting. I mean, look, Motown, Stax of all. I'm a songwriter, but I know what great songwriting is. And, I know a good song, a bad song. I can write bad songs all day long. But writing a really good song, it takes some work. And Bob's point was, instead of you keep rewriting the lyrics, what about working with somebody else as a co-writer? And I was like, well, I don't do much of that. Depends on who it is. He mentioned Lou Reed. We had a laugh because I said, well, how the hell are you going to make that happen? Unbeknownst to me, Bob produced the Berlin album.
Fabulous record. For those that haven't heard it, the Berlin record is kind of a legendary follow-up record to Lou Reed's Transformer album. And it's one of those records that people didn't really understand when it came out, but as the years went on, people have reevaluated it, and it's really a classic record. And you and Bob did amazing work on that record, by the way, the Nils album.
Thank you. I love working with Bob because, he was really, he cracked the whip, but he had a sense of humor. He was a great musician. Sometimes we do like double piano parts together, sing together. My brother Tommy was involved. Afternoon, we're at Lou Reed's studio. We're talking with Lou. He was surprisingly open to the idea. He said, Nils, come to my house next week and let's spend some time talking this through. We had a long night together. We watched a Dallas Cowboy-Washington football game. I was shocked to find out Lou is a massive NFL fan. And, well into the night, we talked about the ideas, and he said, before we get a loft, we'll start working it through, because he was fishing for some material for the Bells album.
Right.
He said, why don't you send me the music? Because we had like a lot of music written. He said, why don't you send me what you have first? And let me listen to it and get used to it, and we'll decide how to go from there. I said, great. Do you want me to just la-di-da the words I have, which I didn't like? He said, no. Give me the titles. Give me everything as you have it in a primitive demo. So I sent him a dozen songs and got back to work with Bob. And I loved the idea, but it was already fun to hang out with Lou and watch football and talk us through. Big fan of his. Anyway, about 3.5 weeks went by. I kind of forgot about it because I didn't hear from Lou. And he woke me up at 4:30 one morning on the landline, before internet, before video. Nils, it's Lou. And I'm like thinking to myself, oh, hi, Lou, it's 4:30 in the morning. And I didn't say that. And he said, look, I've been up 3 days and nights. I love the cassette, which was the tape of the day. I love the music. And I called this hour because I've been up nonstop working on your tape. And I just finished 12 complete sets of lyrics I love.
Fabulous.
And if you're up for it, I'll dictate them to you right now. So I laughed. I put on a pot of coffee, kept him on the phone, got the pad and pencil, and we spent about 2.5 hours. I meticulously made sure I got every word, every syllable. And at the end, I laughed. I said, so, Lou, you woke me up at 4:30 to tell me you and I just co-wrote 12 songs together. I said, yeah, I guess I did. And he used Bells. I used 3. I used a couple on other subsequent albums. And I'd run into Lou. I'd go see him play. My wife and I ran into him up in Aspen one day. He was biking with him and Lori. But I always wanted to revisit the songs left behind, and tragically we lost Lou. So when I realized it was time to get another record going, I knew I had to share those songs that we wrote left behind. And that kind of led to, well, if I'm going to go on the road, if there's ever a time to take a rock band, now's the time. And I was lucky to get the band that made the record.
Fabulous. I mean, we're big Lou Reed fans here on Tough Cookies. We have performed a lot of his songs. And I really felt like this Blues for Lou record was like a special moment for you in your career. I don't know. It felt like, I don't want to say a comeback, but it was just amazing to hear you, rocking so hard after all these years. And you've always put out great live records. So I'm just very thankful that you captured. Amy is a smart woman for making you do that.
Thank God she did that, man, because, I was just being selfish. Like, now I don't want to think about it because there's details and there's work. And, I didn't want to go there. I just wanted to enjoy playing. And much like my first solo record, the Wonderland album, with Andy and Kevin, when we got together, I spent months and months being able to sing and play everything. Not like I'll write the verse later. Because I'm much better. I've learned the hard way. I'm much better live. And we didn't even record for 6 8 days. We just learned 20 songs, 6 of them songs I wrote with Lou, and with a 20-song repertoire before we even rolled tape. And then, no click track, we banned all drum machines, nothing wrong with them. we just banned them for this project. And we wanted to get a live trio in the room. We didn't have baffles. I was sitting there looking at the two other guys.
Old school.
And and we got a great vibe on. And I didn't want to muddy up the trio with a lot of overdubs. So all I added really was the great Cindy Mizell on vocals and a men's choir, kind of like the old Elvis, Ooze, General guys.
Like the Jordanaires.
Yeah, get out of the way of the trio and the interaction we had and the live vocals. And it just felt more immediate and live to me. And that was, of course, the live tour Weather now, where we have this double CD, is an extension of that headspace of, I don't want to, I want to be able to play live and sing and not have to be alone fixing stuff. I like to get it all with the people in the room. And there's my favorite places in front of an audience, of course, with a great band.
I'm with you, Nils. I mean, I learned from listening to records that you and some of your peers made. And speaking of another record that was made in a completely live, unfiltered way, I wonder if I could ask you about the experience of making the Tonight's the Night record with Neil Young back in the 70s. It's my favorite Neil Young album, and it's really like a monument to what you're saying about recording live. Like, you cannot manufacture that chemistry that people have in a room together. What was that like, that experience?
That was, I was actually going to bring that up. I'm glad you did, Adam. That was extraordinary. I was 18 when I did the After the Gold Rush album. And shortly after that, there was always a plan to make a Crazy Horse record featuring Danny Whitten, the right hand, without Neil, and featuring Jack Nitzsche, the great producer, and I joined Crazy Horse to make that first album. Tragically, the only one with Danny alive.
Yeah.
And then fast forward a year or two, we all call it the Wake album because we lost Danny, Jimi Hendrix, Jim Joplin, Jim Morrison, Tim. All these people were dying, our friends and heroes. And Neil wrote this, lack of a better word, the Tonight's the Night album. It was kind of a wake album. We were all frustrated, sad, and kind of enraged that this darkness had settled on this, kind of beautiful Southern California music scene, and globally too, after the British invasion, Staxville, Motown, the whole 60s explosion. And I still remember we were at SIR, Studio Instrument Rentals in East Hollywood, set up to record and practice. We'd show up about dinner time, and we'd just shoot pool, sip tequila, take a puff of Thai weed, whatever, commiserate about Danny's loss. It was really a, open wound at that time, and all these other people just trying to say, well, we got each other. But man, this has been a rough period. And then about midnight, we go in, and not only did Neil and David, his producer David Briggs, they were both my greatest mentors for sure, and I've had quite a few, luckily. They said, look, not only do we want to record live, but we really don't want you, the band, to know well. What happened, even in a studio, you play something 8-9 times, you go, oh, that's a good lick for the verse. I'm going to play it every time. I got my chorus lick, I'm going to go to it every time. And they said, we don't want that. So what we would do, at one end, we'd sit there around the couch with guitars, whatever. I played a lot of piano and guitar on that record. And Neil would show us 3 or 4 songs, right? And Ralphie and I and Ben were the main singers. Billy would sing too, say, here's where you guys sing, and here's the stuff. But trying to learn 3 or 4 songs all at once is impossible. And before you know it, he'd walk us over to the other side, we'd plug in and start to record.
Yeah.
And they warned us. I understand you guys don't know this stuff that well. I need you to stay down it and just stay emotionally attached, which we all had great experience doing with Neil already. And when Neil gets the vocal, when he sings it the way he wants,
that's it.
That's nobody change a single note. And often Ralphie and I would go, man, come on, I didn't even know what the words were. I said, yeah, but you were in it. We're not letting you change it. We had that kind of good-natured battle, and we always lost. But Neil's point was he also called it an anti-production record. He said he's made probably still as a Nash that don't suffer at all from the precision. They benefit from it, and they're great, soulful records. But in this case, he wanted people to see the complete antithesis to production, live in the studio, seat of your pants, without really even knowing what the song was next necessarily, but trusting your instincts and being that hooked into your bandmates, and it worked.
It's like that famous quote from David Crosby. He says, Neil, I can't believe you left us to go play with a bunch of degenerates, you know?" And like between that Tonight's the Night album and the New York album by Lou Reed, I feel like these are two records that are, like you said, they're kind of anti-production albums. If the songs are that good and the spirit is that strong, you sort of clear everything else away, and the energy of the music just comes through like direct to the tape. I wonder if I could ask you about Danny Whitten for a second. A lot of our younger viewers on Tough Cookies might not know about Danny, and you've incorporated I Don't Want to Talk About It into your live set sometimes, which is, you know, one of the most beautiful rock and roll ballads I've ever heard. Been recorded by Rod Stewart, the Indigo Girls, so many people. Tell me about Danny. What was it like working with him?
Man, you know, I walked in on Danny and Crazy Horse and Neil on their first tour. They were at the Cellar Door in Washington, D.C. They were doing 2 shows a night for a few nights, and I walked in. Long story short, they let me sing them some songs. Neil stayed in touch with me. I spent a couple of days with them. My band Grin was headed to L.A. anyway, and true to his word, I looked him up, and him and David Briggs took my band Grin under their wing. I saw a lot of Danny and Ralph Billy when I was out living there in Topanga Canyon. We became good friends. And all along, you know, Danny kind of said, look, when we make our Crazy Horse record, I want you to join the band. And of course, I already had my band Grin. I said, well, look, if you don't mind, I mean, I'd love to make the record with you. And if that's okay, we'll just focus on that. And Jack Nitschke joined too. But Danny was just an amazing singer. Even you know, prior to the Bee Gees, Danny kind of, you can hear it in the early days when him and Neil sing together.
Yeah.
That really, I can tell by your eyes that you've probably been crying forever. This very fakey, easy vibrato.
Yes.
But that was so powerful. It wasn't that fragile. And, you know, that influenced Neil. And Danny doing that on his own way before any of that was going on.
Wow.
And, of course, the Bee Gees made a career out of it, and also being an amazing band and
right.
great records. But we got together, and again, like the old days, we rehearsed. Danny asked me to write a couple songs. I wrote Beggar's Day for him, and we rehearsed at SIR, same thing. But we got a little more prepared. Ry Cooder guested on Bottleneck and just took some songs up, you know, big notch with his beautiful playing. But I Don't Want to Talk About It was the signature song of the record, and Danny had one verse. So we said, well, Danny, we just need a second verse. He said, no problem. Anyway, months later, we rehearsed, recorded the record. The record's done except for I Don't Want to Talk About It. And now we're starting to get on Danny's case. The other guys more than I, because I've only known him a couple years. So Danny, now, what's the time?
Yeah.
Where's the second verse? Well, I just haven't been into it. I said, well, we're not releasing the record without I Don't Want to Talk About It. So, like, how about now? Go do it. And then he got a little cranky, and, you know, he yelled at somebody because they were getting on his case, rightfully so. We were in the studio. We're done, except for that record. He said, you write it. I don't care. I'm not into it. So we haven't been into it for 2 months. We got to get it done. I ran out in the room with this D18 Martin Neil gave me that I used on Tell Me Why and After the Go Rush.
Yeah.
And I just wrote 2 lines for the second verse. I walked back in. I said, Danny, what do you think of this? If I stand all alone, will the shadow hide the color of my heart? Blue for the tears, black for the nights we're apart. Then I went to his line, and the stars in the sky don't mean nothing to you. They're a mirror.
Yeah.
He said, that's great, I'll sing that. I said, good. We rushed him out. Him and I sat across, we sang live. We had that second verse, just 2 lines. Ry Cooder sat right between us, playing this beautiful acoustic bottleneck. Danny sang the hell out of it. Bang, we were done. Ralphie came out. We added a harmony track, and we had our Crazy Horse album finished. So,
wow,
it was a beautiful adventure, and I was hoping to have many, many more with the great Danny Whitten, but I'm glad I had the experiences I had with him. Rest his soul.
I got chills when you were telling that story because that song is magic. When you finish a song like that, do you know it's a hit? Do you know it's an evergreen piece of music?
Yeah, well, back then we were still into that, FM radio, AM radio. Um, AM radio, well, look, we were trying to make a great album, but all of us said that's a hit song. And that's a gorgeous song, whether it's a hit or not, that has to be on the record. And sure enough, of course, we wish Danny was alive to see Rod Stewart turn into the great hit it had been. It's funny, at the end of the Buenos Aires tour, I did some love Rod Stewart. I used to open for the Faces. Way back in the Jeff Beck Truth album's first tour, I was a little teenage groupie with my Telecaster following the Jeff Beck group around. And I will say that I sneak backstage, and Peter Grant, the manager, used to grab me and start dragging me down the hall. And Rod Stewart and Ronnie Wood would always say, "Stop, Peter. Let him be. He can hang with us." And they'd always let me hang out with them, answer my questions. They were very supportive. A couple years later, my band Grin opens for the Faces after Ronnie and Rod joined them. But I did some session work for Rod way back in '85 at the end of the Buenos Aires tour. And I told him that story, and we sang a little bit of that beautiful song. And, he did it. Nobody could sing better than Rod Stewart. He did it justice, and I'm sure Danny was listening up in heaven. But, yeah, that was we all recognize that as a gorgeous tune that had to be shared.
It sure is, and we're going to perform it here in a minute on Tough Cookies. Nils, listen, I wanted to ask you a Grin question, if you don't mind. My guitar player, Will, who my audience knows, he can play anything, but he wanted me to tell you that the very first song that his father taught him on guitar was Moon Tears.
Wow.
And he grew up in Washington, D.C., which, am I correct, that's where you're from as well?
Yeah, I left the south side of Chicago when I was 8 and grew up in Maryland, D.C. So, my formative years were all around the Maryland, D.C., Virginia area, yes.
Well, so he used to hear Moon Tears on the radio. That song got played a bit regionally on the radio, am I right?
Yeah, we were actually lucky. Grin got a little bit of airplay, especially in that area, of course. But thanks to FM radio, we made 4 albums with David Briggs, our producer, and we did get a bit of airplay here and there. Moon Tears is one of them.
Well, we're going to do our best here on Tough Cookies to perform Moon Tears for our audience tonight. I wish that we were there with you and you could do it with us. We'll do that one day. I hope we don't screw it up. But I just want you to know how much Will and I love those Grin albums just so much. And I'm going to turn on all of my Tough Cookie listeners to Moon Tears and White Lies and all those Grin songs that I love. To jump forward to your solo career, speaking of live albums like Weathered, there's a very famous live version of your song Black Books that was used in the greatest television show of all time, The Sopranos. I think for a lot of people, that was, for a younger generation, their introduction to your solo career was the use of that song. How did that come about? How did the live recording, which I love the studio version, but that live version is fantastic of Black Books.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. Again, just a beautiful twist of fate. We were doing an E Street Band show. I believe it was Madison Square Garden. And all the shows with Bruce are great, wherever you are. But afterwards, Stevie Van Zandt, of course, the whole Sopranos gang down. And we were visiting afterwards, Amy and I, David Chase, and Amy was like, go get some of your albums. So I went and got some of the acoustic live records, and she handed them out, gave a couple to David Chase and his wife. And a few weeks later, we got a letter. And, I look at it, and I'm kind of spacey. So, somebody liked Black Books. That's nice. And I just put the letter on the table, and Amy was like, Nils, David Chase. And I said, what? Anyway, I read the letter, and he said, look, I love your album, and I want to use one of your tracks, Black Books, in The Sopranos. So anyway, we got in touch, honored that he used it, and it was kind of funny, too, because word got around, because you're right, as great a TV show as there's ever been.
Ever.
Any kind of show. And Ringo Disc, who I had a falling out with and finally got away from. No hard feelings. That's the music business. But, they started like putting out feelers and saying, hey, wait a minute, that's our track, so you're going to have to talk to us. And it was fun for me and my wife to go, no, they don't want your track. They want my acoustic live version.
Yeah.
And you have nothing to say about that, so you could go back home. And David put in a beautiful spot.
Yes.
When Tony's wife goes up to see the daughter at college, the daughter's not in the room, and she's sitting there in the hallway.
With her lasagna.
Yeah, first time in her life contemplating maybe it's not going to work out with Tony, and he puts Black Books in there. It's just, just an honor and a beautiful thing. Hats off to Amy for giving him the CD to begin with. But
again, Amy, this is a smart woman. She's a keeper.
No, look, she's got, other than playing blues guitar, she has better taste than me in general. And, another funny story, going way back to talking about the first Grin record. There's a little known fact, but on a song called "See What a Love Can Do."
Yeah.
The only time that Danny Whitten, Neil Young, and Ralph do a harmony session as harmony singers.
Wow.
And all three of them, the chorus and "See What a Love Can Do," when you hear it, it's very, very powerful. And they also sang on another track or two, but that track in particular, man, hearing those three guys together and Danny going off, it was really beautiful. There was also a strange double bouncing harmonic two-line guitar lead that I did there that no one had ever done. David said, we're going to do the solo tomorrow. What are you going to do? I started thinking, instead of just playing, riffing, I came up with this, two-line thing, harmony. But every other note, I hit harmonic, so it was kind of bouncing back and forth. And one of the great moments of my life, because I think Jeff Beck's the greatest rhythm guitar player on the planet. Mm-hmm. And there was a little party at Stoney, and Clive Davis, he had signed us, so we were all listening to it. And Jeff was passing through town. He came to the listening party with his manager, and he remembered me from being a groupie, following the Truth album around, and always going to his shows. I never missed a show. And it blew my mind, because, hey, Nils, I checked out some of the record, and I got a hats off to that double bouncing harmonic solo. I really liked that a lot. And I was stunned that Jeff Beck would say that. And next time you check out the harmonies there, you'll hear Danny and Neil and Ralphie. It's a beautiful sound they got going.
I certainly will. I want to ask you, boys and girls, we are talking to the great Nils Lofgren, Rock and Roll Hall of Famer, rock and roll lifer. Needs no introduction, but you're
52 years next month on the road. 52 years.
Unbelievable. And really, when I heard Weathered, I said, the kids still got it. I hope we get another 20 Nils Lofgren records. And I hope that when it's possible, when it's safe, that we get to see you out there on the road with your band again.
Yeah, look, we got this all. Country is doing one of the worst jobs in the globe handling it, to all our detriment. I mean, to me, that's daily moral treason in my eyes. But to not get too deep into that, I was really getting greedy, because just before it really hit, in the beginning of the year, Neil Young was going to take Crazy Horse out. April 29th, we started in Chicago. We're going to play a few months. Then I thought maybe I'd try to get the Weather Band out at the end of the year. There was a good chance we were getting a good vibe that maybe next year would be a long year out with E Street. And I thought, oh my God, am I going to have that year and a half of being a road? Because that's what I love to do the most, is be on stage with a band. And I got really excited and greedy, and poof. So anyway, you're right. We're all looking forward to those days. And now the game is we all take care of ourselves included, and do what we can so it's safe and healthy to get out and do that again.
Well, lastly, Nils, before you go, speaking of live rock and roll, on this show, on Tough Cookies, not only do we try to motivate people and lift their spirits through rock and roll, but we also try to shed light on issues going on in our country and in the world.
Right.
The first time that I ever got to see E Street Band, because I was a little bit too young to catch you guys on the Born in the USA tour, the Tunnel of Love tour. I caught you guys on that reunion tour, the late 90s into the early 2000s.
Yeah.
One of the first performances I ever saw the band, with the E Street Band, was when you guys started to do American Skin, 41 Shots. I saw you do it in New York City.
Yeah.
And recently, after the murder of George Floyd, I performed that song here on the show at my piano. And we got an amazing response, and it's really an important song to me, an important song to a lot of people. I will never forget seeing you all perform the song, and Clarence and you and Patty each saying 41 shots at the beginning of the song. I was wondering if you could just take a few minutes and talk to me about that performance and that song, and what it was like to play it 20 years ago, and then maybe to play it now.
You know, when Bruce came in at a low key. I mean, we're all on stage waiting, and sometimes he'll just walk up, give a nod, go right to a mic, and start singing something we never heard. And that's kind of the case. Today, working on something new. Let's learn it. And all of a sudden, as we started following and learning and listening to those lyrics, after, of course, you know, being fresh off of that awful experience,
Yeah.
And the death of that young man.
Amadou Diallo, right?
Yeah, after decades and decades of things like that happening, it really gave me chills. And, you know, and sure enough, he said, yeah, I think we'll start singing that for a while in the shows. And, of course, thanks to the internet and all that crap, even before people read the lyrics, because if you read the lyrics, it's actually quite respectful to police. It's just trying to be respectful to humanity.
Right.
And the police union guy got on, you know, Daily News and started trying to trash Bruce and drum up, you know, support against it. And I have policemen friends that are very good friends, and, you know, they were trying to explain to their fellow policemen before they even read the words. What are you doing? Yeah, but that's the world we're in, right? You know, I mean, contempt prior to investigation.
Yeah.
And so when we played the song, there would be, you know, a dozen people, officers come up and yell and give us dirty looks and yell at Bruce. Then they go back to their seats. And my friends who were near them say they went back to their seats, and the rest of the night they were pumping their fists and
Right.
drinking beer and having. And, you know, I think, fortunately, time has prevailed and people have listened and looked at what Bruce was saying and what he was actually intending. And it's a very powerful message. We did it regularly wherever we did it for quite a while. There'd be that little group that felt like they had to go on record trying to be disruptive. But, you know, the power, that dark mood was so ominous. And, you know, generally there was, you know, 10, 15,000 people around them were like, you know, quiet, get out of here. Let's pay some respect and take this in. And, you know, Bruce has written so many powerful statements like that, but that's right up there because it still gives you chills that someone would even have to speak to that kind of, you know, horror. And we're still living it. I will say back in 68, Green got to play some of the massive civil rights marches downtown Washington, D.C. And, you know, there'd be like hundreds of thousands of people. And, you know, no one was paying attention to us. We do a little warm-up at 10 in the morning with no PA, just play with our amps. But we were happy to be there and participate. And, you know, you might see a white face here and there, but you had to look quite a ways. And in the last few months, seeing hundreds of thousands of kids all over the world of every age, a lot of them white, coming out and protesting and saying, wait a minute, enough is enough. And, you know, I'm 69 now, and we've all lived a lot of that experience, and it kind of beats you down, and it does weather you that's such a big part of our history, trying to get our act together, you know, and get rid of that kind of racism and judgment. But a lot of these younger people today didn't have to go through that. And to them, they're just discovering the history. They're going, wait a minute, what? You couldn't use the bathroom?
Yeah.
What are you talking about? But you couldn't eat a hot dog with me at the diner? No, wait a minute, what do you mean? Then they're finding out fresh about this sordid, awful part of our American history that we're working away from. But it keeps rearing its ugly head, and God bless all these people out there demonstrating, and we'll continue to do it. And, you know, take this morally treasonous administration out and start getting a fledgling democracy back, I hope to God, start working on these problems as a human race that cares about each other. And that's what I think the majority of the planet wants to go. But you get these crazy psychopathic leaders that are just about money and power, and it's time to like say enough of that. I mean, we should have never had that, but that's the human condition. You know, we're all living it. So God bless all those people that continue every day to get out and protest and cry out for a better America, a better globe, a better planet.
Well, listen, I want to thank you for a life of work, and you know, the work that you've done with Bruce, the work that you've done with Neil Young, the work that you did with Lou Reed, the work that you did with Ringo, your solo material, Grin. It's rock and roll that you can dance to. It's rock and roll that you can make out to, but it's also rock and roll that speaks truth. It speaks a lot of truth. And for a younger generation of rock and roll artists like myself, it's been very inspirational. And I just want to thank you for the work that you've done. And before you go, I got one last question. We have some viewers that are most of all the great things that you've done in your whole career. The thing that they wanted to know the most about was, did you write some songs for The Simpsons?
I did not, but here's what happened. Way back in the early 90s, a couple good friends of mine were working at Fox. The holidays were coming, and they said, Nils, we got an idea where you're going to do Christmas jingles, just a show on our network with Bart Simpson. And the theme would be that you're going to be kind of the straight, traditional melody guitar player, and then even though you're going to play his part, Bart's going to be all over the place with the Wayne bar and the fuzz tone, playing the crazy Jimi Hendrix stuff. Would you do it? And I was so honored to go in and, you know, that whole world of animation studio and record two different parts, you know, my straight, because I love Christmas. I love, you know, those kinds of songs and the old songbook. And so I played that straight, and then I did the wild guitar for Bart to play air guitar too. So there are about, I think, 3 pieces that aired quite prominently for a year or two on Fox. Tragically, my buddies could never find the footage, but I did technically get to jam with Bart Simpson. I like to say I'm the only living guitarist that got to play with Bart Simpson and Cab Calloway. So, you know, one of my claims to fame. But me and Bart had a ball, and if anyone ever sees the footage, hey, film it and send it to me, because I'd love to see it again.
Listen, Nils, we are big fans. We're so thankful that you joined us here today. The new record is Weathered. It's out later this month. It is a live record. It spans your career. It also focuses on that Blues for Lou album that I've spoken so highly of. I hope that we all get out on their road. I hope I see you out there at a show. But in the meantime, keep making music. Keep making records. You're a lifer. And I love you very much. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Adam, and love to you and your band. It's great to hear you're going to be playing Moon Tears or anything.
Yeah.
The fact that you're playing is a beautiful thing. And, you know, thank God, at least we have the internet for all the good and bad it has, to be able to talk to people and see friends, get on a phone, speak with people we're missing. So let's just keep doing it, keep making music, and thanks for having me on your show and spreading the word about my music.
All the best to you, my friend. Take care. I'll talk to you soon. Mwah!
All right. All the best. God bless. Thanks, Adam.
Take care.
Cheers.